Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Welcome to the broadcast.
Going with the flow, man.
Yeah, this is a. It might look like from afar, you might have seen it maybe, and you're like, wow, this is such a professional stream. Like, is that Jake Tapper? It's not. You know what I mean?
Hey,
it's
man,
not like that at all.
This is the way I've put most things together in my life. So
okay,
I appreciate
great.
It,
a lot of duct tape.
Yeah,
I don't know if you did that.
The floor is being held together by duct tape over here.
So, I'm very excited to have you. You're a young person in Congress, so that's good. I mean, there's a lot of younger people in Congress now, but you're also very progressive.
Well, yeah, I think when I came in, I'm like third youngest, but not long ago there were none of us in our early 30s or late 20s.
Yeah, I'm gonna move the chat overlay real quick because it was over your head.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people from Austin here that are excited to have you. They wanted me to ask you about the housing initiatives that you guys have done over there.
Yep.
That were pretty good in combating homelessness. But how would you describe what you do, who you are to the community, to the chat here?
Yeah, we'll talk housing here in a second. Before I was an elected official, I was a labor organizer and doing immigrants' rights work, labor organizing work, bringing people together to demand that our city make some change, because the city of Austin at the time was really being run by basically the police association and the big real estate lobby. But when actual working people came forward and said, hey, pay us better.
By the way, that's LA. You just described LA as well.
Yeah. But we organized, and when people actually heard what we were asking for, they were like, well, the Dems in office should be for this. But when folks like the mayor at the time, multiple mayors ago, wouldn't listen, that helped us change the city. I ended up running for city council, did work there for 7 years focusing on housing, and then ran for Congress. And now I'm whip of the Progressive Caucus, which is like the third ranking position amongst progressives, bringing people together to fight Trumpism, but then actually fight for a vision for the future.
Someone in the chat says, ask Greg about Austin voters voting for the Police Oversight Act in 2022 and the City Council still not implementing in 2024, mostly due to police unions stalling.
Yeah, so this is an initiative that I worked really carefully on. What folks at home may not know is that so much of police accountability work gets negotiated in these police union contracts. Now, I support labor, I support people's right to negotiate for higher wages and benefits, but not to negotiate away people's civil rights. And so what we would see with the police association in Austin and all over the country is that they would basically say, well, you got to water down civil rights for us to sign a contract.
Yeah.
What the Austin voters did, that I hope people do all over the country, is they voted into the city's constitution, called the city charter, the oversight rules, so they couldn't get watered down in that process. Now the police association is trying to refuse to sign a contract to not ever let it go into effect. But I'm hoping that the city council continues to hold strong and says, no, we're going to enforce these standards so that, people working the beat, doing that hard job, can get paid decently without watering down civil rights rules. So that's something that I hope people do in cities across the country. I think Austin's going to show what citizen-driven oversight can look like.
I love that. I have some questions. I mean, you're a fighter. You're in a objectively hostile area in general. I mean, Austin isn't, but Texas is, right?
Well, what ends up happening is we'll pass some. I represent Austin and San Antonio. We'll pass something like water breaks for workers.
Yeah.
And then the governor will pass a bill saying no more water breaks allowed.
Yeah.
Rules allowed. So it's inherently a battle between progressives and on the ground, not just in cities, but on the ground.
Yeah.
And a really pretty right-wing state government.
So here's the question I have for you. I think that the Texas GOP has done a phenomenal job captivating the Latino base of voters in Texas by hyper-focusing on social issues. And I think that the Democratic Party has also simultaneously alienated Latino voters by not focusing on things that they care about in terms of their material necessities. One thing that I always talk about, I want to run this by you basically. One thing that I always talk about is I think a very informative Pew Center research study that they conduct regularly on Latino voters. Obviously, it's not monolithic. You have, especially when you look at like Cuban or Venezuelan voters, like they break very differently. But Latino voters consistently outside of that overwhelmingly are in support of big government initiatives, which is like a very negative way to frame that.
Taxing the rich.
Yeah.
Making sure that people's child care and health care gets paid for, that people get paid what they deserve at work.
Even in the demographics that you would never expect that, like the plus 65 demographics, Latino voters still are way more in favor of progressive economic policy initiatives than every other demographic in the country. Obviously, young Latino voters, that's why they were very pro-Bernie, and that's a
in
big
some of
part
the
how
areas
Bernie
that
won.
folks have said,
Yeah.
where we're losing Latino voters in South Texas is actually where we've taken Bernie most recently, where he's most popular.
Yeah.
And I think I agree in your core premise, but there's just a few facts that I think are important for folks to know. Latino voters in places like Texas primarily aren't Republican or Democratic, they're non-voters. They're folks overwhelmingly who have been spewed all this information. They're like, ¿sabes qué? Everybody's pretty much the same. What's the point of getting involved?
Yeah.
And we've got to deliver people the goods. Then, as far as voters go, yeah, they're still generally voting for Democrats, but we're losing a lot of people. And it's especially amongst working class voters outside the big cities.
Yeah.
And you're right. The Republicans have focused on culture war issues. The Democratic response gets highlighted in the media. It makes it look like we're focused on those issues when we really should be saying we care about taxing the rich, making sure your schools are well funded, making sure folks have health care, and support the union movement, which Latinos have really been leading in Texas for a really long time. And I think that's what brings people back. San Antonio, where I represent, people said, oh, you're way too far to the left for this heavy veteran community, a place usually with more conservative elected officials. When I go and talk to those voters at their doors, they're more progressive than many Austin voters.
Yes.
Because they care about saying, why does Elon Musk get away with all this stuff and I work 50 or 60 hours a week and can barely get by? And so making those connections and picking those fights is really important.
That's the most consistent thing I've seen with like door knocking when I was knocking on doors for Bernie Sanders is that like voters are mostly disaffected. They just they don't feel like either party represents their interests. And I feel like the Democratic Party could actively bring a lot of these people back into the fray and even pull some of the people who might have been caught up in this radicalization wave of like culture war phenomena, culture war issues and whatnot, and say like, no, we're going to get you the goods. We are going to genuinely solve your problems. This is something I talk about with respect to Texas specifically. Like everybody always talks about like, oh, Texas is going to turn blue, Texas is going to turn blue. Like I don't necessarily think so, especially because like a lot of the people that are coming into Texas from my state are oftentimes the most insane, like, right-wing, reactionary weirdos that go to Texas, and, like, the native Texans are significantly more progressive than they are, but, you know, there is always a new crop of people coming in that are going to vote for right-wing initiatives, but overall, a lot of these disaffected people would be more interested in participating
working
in
class
politics.
folks.
Yeah.
We've identified nearly 1 million never Greg Abbott voters in the state that the Democratic Party and campaigns never talk to. They don't vote. We don't talk to them. It perpetuates folks not voting and participating. We should go and listen and go and hear what people have to say. And that's really how you flip the state, not just to a blue state, but to one that actually helps those folks and lift working people up, because we're becoming such an unequal place, again, with folks like Elon Musk and other people moving their operations to Texas because they think it can be their playground. I think it can be sort of the epicenter of solidarity and showing what organizing in the South can look like. The South used to be a more progressive place. President LBJ from Texas signed Medicaid into law, signed the Voting Rights Act into law, signed Head Start into law, signed the Civil Rights Act into law. We can get back there.
Okay, I like that. So, how, like, is there any active initiative? Do you sometimes feel like it's a lost cause in terms of like the way the Democratic Party has to manage the limited amount of funds that they have? Like, are they focusing enough? There are certain things like I don't know how contentious you can be, and while I find myself seemingly agreeing with Nancy Pelosi quite a bit recently with respect to what happened with like swapping out Biden, putting Kamala in. And even actively petitioning for Waltz to be the VP. There was one moment where Henry Cuellar was going up against Jessica Cisneros, where I feel like the Democratic Party took a major misstep and defended the incumbent in that situation instead of pushing out a problematic incumbent with a federal investigation being conducted on him at the time. I feel like that to me spells that like there's business as usual politics within the Democratic Party. Is that going to change anytime soon? Do you feel like there's active decision making in that regard?
Look, I don't see the Democratic Party itself as being the full savior of all of this, right? For some of the limitations that we all know about, and that I even have to live with as an elected official. Basically, I think everybody's got to play their role. And it's a lot of these community building organizations, folks like Texas Organizing Project in San Antonio, or Workers Defense Project up in Austin and Dallas, that we need to make sure there's funding for so they go and expand the voter universe. One of the limitations we have as elected officials is our campaign money comes in and people are donating to you to win the next campaign. They're not donating for you to register voters so somebody else can win 6 or 8 years from now.
Yeah.
Now, some of us try to do some of that, but look, think about how the institution is built. We need to build institutions that are looking towards a longer future, and that's what some of us in elected office need to sort of start boosting up.
Yeah, I mean, labor probably is one of the most consistent ways that you can do that outside of like the 2-year, 4-year election cycle, where you can build labor power and then actively petition even the larger Democratic Party by having some kind of stronghold against that.
And tenant associations and tenant unions too, we're starting those in Texas. Organize your building, organize your workplace, and we do need that independent power, and it moves the party. I mean, you saw a bunch of union leaders here speak, and that's moving the Democratic Party to be less corporate driven and more worker driven, and that's good.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, that's sick. What do you, I mean, Texas right now apparently is having another power grid failure. 7,000 people are without power, 109 degrees. Like, how do you fix that? What do you do there?
So I have a bill to work on this, and it's called the Connect the Grid Act. See, if you're in most parts of the United States, you're interconnected with other grids. So that if you have a heat wave or a winter storm and your power starts going down, you can pull in power from neighboring states.
Yeah.
It's called the United States of America.
Texas doesn't do that.
Texas is disconnected.
Yeah.
So when we had this giant winter storm, we couldn't pull in power from places where there was sun. With my bill to force the interconnection of the Texas grid, over 80% of those blackouts would have been avoided. And so it's those sorts of ideas that they don't always fall on the left-right spectrum necessarily, but you talk to a normal person, they remember that winter storm in Texas. They go, damn, somebody that actually cares about what's going on with me. And that's part of it. Being progressive, important, but people just thinking you care and you're a good person, they might be okay disagreeing with you about a few things. You know?
Yeah.
Some of the folks listening here, you and me, we might disagree about some stuff, but if they think, you know what, you're actually just trying, you give a shit about me, then that actually is a huge part of this.
Absolutely. They also probably remember Ted Cruz leaving the state, but they still end up voting for him. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really good question because he's so unlikable. You know, he is a really, really vulnerable incumbent. I think that it's just a segment of people that are just voting Republican no matter what. And we have such a huge universe of people that are disgusted with him, but don't know that they can make a difference.
Yeah.
And it's that disbelief in ourselves, I think, that's holding us back.
I mean, same with Mitch McConnell for years and years. I feel like he never had like a real genuine constituency. I've never met a single person that was like, I love Mitch McConnell. And yet he kept winning over and over again because these are like reliable Republican Party voters in a Republican state.
But the arc for that change, I'll tell you real quick, Austin, Texas, which we're talking about as the liberal bastion, George W. Bush won the popular vote in Austin, Texas. So if you think about it, it has now changed to a 70% plus Democratic city. Barack Obama lost to Mitt Romney by 17 points. Joe Biden, it was just 5 points between him and Trump. So I think something else that folks have to remember is like when the civil rights movement was happening, it's not like people did sit-ins for a year or two and then it all changed. It was like a multi-decade process, and we have to know that the arc of history is long, and the best thing the right wing and the status quo and big billionaires want is for us to just say, well, we're tired, we've done it a lot, and we got to quit. It's that never quitting thing that's going to get us there.
Okay. I love that. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
I believe in you.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Okay.
Any last thing you want to talk about before I jump?
I was going to ask you, is there anything you want to talk about specifically that you want to bring up?
Well, I want folks to know that organizing in your community, it makes a freaking difference. And even when you take a hit, that backlash, that pushback is just part of this process. Folks asked me about the Police Oversight Act. And when we started out trying to just get in the rooms with the mayor, then we finally passed some police oversight measures. Then we had the George Floyd protests and did some amazing things. Then there was a huge backlash. We lost a lot of what we won.
Yeah.
Now we're back on the front foot. When I was a labor organizer, we were working on winning water breaks. We got those taken away by the governor. Water breaks for workers in Texas. But now we've been pushing. I had a thirst strike protest on the steps of the Capitol calling on President Biden. to overrule the governor and pass water breaks across the country, and now he's done it. And that'll hopefully go in force next year if we elect Harris as president. So just know that with every victory there can be loss, but the question is, do you push your way through that loss? So follow what I'm up to. I'm on all the socials at Greg Casar. It's awesome to get to hang
nice
with
to
you,
meet you, man. You're great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
we'll be
coming
back,
on.
okay?
All right,
invite me
absolutely.
back. Take care.
I will. All right, that was Greg Casar, everybody. Texas representative, labor organizer. That's the difference between having someone from a labor background versus having someone who is just a politician through and through. Wonderful dude. Also, only 2 years older than me. That's kind of crazy. The fuck am I doing with my life? You know what I mean?